There we go. Hopefully you can all see that. Just checking. Dawn, we can all see that. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, so hi. What's quite nice is I recognise some of the faces from Instagram as well. So hi to everyone. As it says there, I'm Linda Harvey, and I'm just going to talk really about why I think it's important for me to make time for art, and what I think is quite good is when I'm seeing sort of quite a few people here who are stitching at the same time, which is great, or doing something else and multitasking, and that's the sort of thing that I'd also be doing if I was watching a presentation. And I did watch on the YouTube channel the mindfulness one, because I couldn't make it in actually live, but that was really interesting, and I think that's why it's important to me, because it was just sort of helps me and makes me sort of a bit calmer really, I suppose. So I'm just talking about why I feel it's important to make time for my art, and also, as it says there, inspiration is nothing without action. So I'm just going to talk about how I got to sort of that stage. So this is me here 31 years ago, so nice big 50 next year, looking forward to that one. And when I was at school, didn't particularly like textiles. I did think it was, sounds bad to say, but I did think it was quite boring. Maybe that was down to the teaching methods, I don't know. But then I left school at 16, went and did a full-time art course, and then just fell in love with textiles, and that was definitely down to my tutor. And anybody who follows me on Instagram will probably know my tutor's called Jane, or she was called Jane Askey, and she's on Instagram at the minute, and she was just amazing, and she made me fall in love with the subject. So from there I went on and did a fashion and textiles degree in Somerset, which was just a really small college, but again I had a really good time, which then led me here. So you can see for over 25 years I've been a textiles teacher, and that particular classroom there is my classroom that I've spent the last 20 years in. And it's great. I haven't left the school because I like it. Both my children went to the school, so I had 2 maternities there. One's just going to be leaving on Thursday, that'll be her last exam, and my eldest is in her first year at uni. So lots of memories there really. So it is sort of a bit home from home. Seem to spend a lot of my time there. And I really quite like a quote. If you come to my classroom, you'll see that there are quotes, and I really like this one. I've got this one up in the classroom. You can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have. And I really like that, because I feel like when I've sort of gone on my creative journey, the more I do, the more sort of creativity pours out of me. Whereas if I stop, I find I have difficulty getting going again. So I think that's why I tend to sort of do quite a lot of work, or it feels like I'm doing quite a lot of work. So again, this is me. I have blurred them out because I wasn't sure of the GDPR, but I thought it was just good to see that I sort of teach the age range from sort of 11 years all the way up to 18 years. And really the school that I'm at is very mixed. Just like most schools really, and you sort of get the children who really want to be there and the children who don't want to be there, but my job really is to try and inspire them, and every day I try and do that as best as I can really. So that's sort of my sort of teaching career and where I'm at now. But then I decided, and it was probably about 5 years ago, I thought all I was doing is I was just worked full time, and I just felt something was missing, and I just didn't quite know what it was. And I just thought, I'm making resources, I'm doing work for students, because that's, you know, I enjoy, but I still found that there was something else I wanted to do. So I then started to think, well, how can I do that and work full time with all of the demands of, you know, everything, a small family, etc. So that's when I decided, I thought, well, I'm sure I can do 10 minutes a day. If I just do 10 minutes and I set 10 minutes aside, I can do it. And then I haven't really looked back since then really, and that's why I've put this quote up here: you never find time for anything. If you want time, you must make it. And that's what I'd sort of decided. As I say, it was about 5 or 6 years ago, and then that's when things started to pick up really. So just some of the things that I've done in order to sort of help me. I've kept it quite local. So you can see here, this is Elvington Air Museum, which is about a mile away from me. So I just thought, I'm going to do projects that I can get to, that aren't going to be too time consuming to actually revisit. And so this is just a place where there's just so much texture, and it's just a really nice place to visit. And if you live in Elvington, you get them free as well, which is always quite nice. So I tend to do the same things, and you will have seen some of these images before, because I have shared them on Instagram and Facebook, but I'll always start with photographs. I don't really work from a sketchbook. Again, it could be a time thing. I do have sketchbooks, and occasionally I'll use them, but I'll mainly take photos and then I'll work directly from the photograph. So I'll tend to just take lots of things that interest me, and then from them I'll maybe make mock-ups, make samples, and the work tends to be quite abstract, looking at the sort of the patterns, the patina, the colours, and sort of taking it from there really. So you can see I've got in my studio, I've got 2 pin boards, so I just pop all the work up on a pin board, and then that'll guide me as to sort of what I want to do really. So you can just see lots of sort of patterns there. Then I'll just start to try out lots of ideas. And then when I found that I was doing this, the 10 minutes would sometimes end up more, sometimes it would just be 10 minutes. But I found I was trying out lots more ideas than I normally would, that I would then sort of take back into the classroom. So I was so much more productive by just giving myself that small achievable goal, rather than saying, I'm going to spend 2 hours in the studio, because I knew that wouldn't happen on an evening when I had lots of other things that I needed to be doing. So some of these are the samples that I've done, and then what I'll tend to do is I'll take them into the classroom and I'll show students just the techniques so they can handle them, they can sort of ask questions. So I don't keep them completely separate. I quite like to sort of share ideas. And also, it's a really easy way of making samples without feeling like you're making samples, because you're doing them for yourself, but you're learning a lot on the way that you can then pass on that knowledge, which I feel is definitely to keep really fresh with ideas that I share. So all of these are still from the Air Museum. So again, I can just look back at my phone, or I can print them out, or I can go and revisit them. Again, if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, you'll know I have a fascination with rust, and again, it's just those lovely crusty textures, the colours, and they're the sort of things that I wanted to explore a little bit more, which is what I've sort of done in these pieces of work. So these are all very experimental, just trying out lots of techniques that we do use in the classroom all the time. So there's the rust dyeing there, there's water soluble fabric, free motion embroidery, sort of hand stitching. So quite a few layering of fabric, so quite a few different techniques going on just for the one piece. So this usually is what I might do on the weekend. So if I'm trying out a new sample, I'll try and make the most of the good weather. So this is just trying out some rust knitting, and then just leaving it in the garden, seeing what happens really. And usually, you know, you have some happy accidents and sometimes you don't, but just sort of trying out different things, seeing if they work. And then this is a piece that I've worked on for probably well over a year actually. And again, I think it's good to show the students what don't work as well. So I'll show ideas and say this isn't working, you know, and the reasons what I think, and can get their opinion on pieces of work as well. So again, keeping it local, this was just a local walk, looking at the bed springs and then seeing what I could do with that. So again, there's some knit in there, and there's some rust and there's some weave in there. So there's lots and lots of mixed media going on with most of the pieces. And then expand it, another big favourite of mine, and I know students really love this as well. So I'm sure all of you have used it with your students, but expand it if you haven't is great. Just for getting really gorgeous textures, and you can do so much with it as well. So the expand it sort of, you can see the one on the right. And then again, just using the photos and just therefore also having a bank of photos, or having areas that you can tell, because I'm quite local to where I work, areas you can tell students to go to, because you know, because you've already been, what might be quite interesting for them to look at certain textures and look at certain patterns, etc., because you've already done sort of like a sort of recce, I suppose. So again, from that, some bigger pieces sometimes evolve. So this is a bigger piece just inspired by some of the experiments that I'd done earlier. So again, I might take them into work, but not all the time. Holiday time, I mean, we all go on holiday and all take hundreds of photos, and I just tend to find that I'm always drawn to the same sort of photos. So these are just some screen printed samples with some distressing, so using the cheese grater to distress, using some expand it, some hand stitching, again lots of layering of fabrics as well. And that's just the lovely boat that I do return to quite a lot, because I do quite like a rustic boat. So again, not necessarily a sketchbook, but more of a photo book that I find really useful just to flick through and just get some more ideas from. Again, lots of textures that you'll see, but also just encouraging students to reuse. So on the right, that's from some screen printing that I'd done, and that's just the base of the screen print, which I actually thought was nicer than the screen print itself. So that was the leftover from the newsprint, but again, make really nice cards that, you know, and again, really good for the students as well. So just trying to, as I know we all do anyway, but encouraging them to reuse everything and not throw anything away. So that's one of the bigger pieces from it, just again looking at some of the textures and the layers, and that's it in the studio. So I tend to have a few pieces on the go at once, so that they ended up being 2 big pieces in the end, so you can just see them sort of both there, and that's where I'm sitting now. So the chair that you can see is sort of where I am. Lockdown, and sort of really trying to make the most of the time, because we are never going to get that time again like we had then. Even though it was a very stressful time with remote teaching, it was lovely to get out and just get some fresh air, and actually it made me really look at my surroundings very locally, and in this case the pavement. So again, a really nice project, just looking at the ground, looking at the textures, looking at the patterns, but all within 1 mile of where I live, but just so much inspiration. And it's not very exciting where I live, but it's just a general pavement, and just picking out sort of the textures from that really. So that was just a project, and I ended up doing quite a lot of work in lockdown on various patterns. So again, this is very near the airfield, and they're all the lovely, I shouldn't say lovely potholes, but I did quite like them. So again, picking out the pattern from them. And then some more. So just loads to go at really in terms of, and a super project. So some, I'll just whiz through those because they're all similar. And again, just trying out different scales. So some large pieces. So that's a much larger piece. I think that piece is about 70 by 50 centimeters, whereas these ones are much smaller, just little sample pieces from them. Visiting again, as you can tell from my accent, I'm originally from Stoke-on-Trent. So these were taken when I went to visit my mum. And again, just an amazing place. So if any of you are near Stoke-on-Trent, a really interesting place to visit for so much inspiration there. And again, these were just all the textures taken from there that you could just pick up. And again, you can use as banks of photos to sort of share. And that's just on my wall in the studio, just to sort of pick up some ideas of the wall. It was just a beautiful wall that just had loads of textures that you could use for many different projects. Some close-ups there, so just sort of sharing different ways of working. So I think that one was screen printed, and then there's Tyvek in there. I think there might be some expand it in there, and there's some hand stitch, and there's also the embellisher. So there's quite a few different techniques going on just for one piece, and then it's sort of ripped away and then added more sort of textures onto it. So you can sort of see, I don't know if you can sort of see to the right of the presser foot there, you can see that's just torn away Tyvek, which when you've added lots of paint to it, you get these really crusty textures, which are really lovely. And just trying out different materials. I mean, most of us in our classroom have so many materials donated to us as well, but just seeing what you can do with them. So that one is painted wool, and quite a few layers of painted wool, and then just hand stitched through and just trying out different sort of techniques from that. There's some more expand it, because I do like a bit of expand it, and again just showing the different and the weaves are really nice once you've painted onto like a really open weave. And then that again, that's the same. So that's what I call a Tyvek sandwich. So it's sort of printed or painted, just cotton, or you could try lots of different materials. And then sandwiched between it is a heavily painted layer of Tyvek. And then you pop on top, making sure it's still wet, some more painted fabric, pop it under the heat press, and then pull it away from each other quite quickly. And then you sort of get those lovely textures from it. So you can just try out lots and lots of different colours from it. So I didn't really know what technique it was technically called, so that's why I called it that, but it seemed to make sense. Again, really simple technique here, but we just get donated lots and lots of things, and I get donated. So these were some donations of some wallpaper, and because it's got this sort of nice sticky back on it already, I just put lots of wallpaper in a washing up bowl, left it in there for maybe a minute or so, maybe a bit longer, sort of screwed it all up to give it a bit more texture, and then probably shouldn't do this, but I put it under the heat press when it was still wet. And then you sort of get lots of steam, but it does give you a really nice texture when you pull it off, because it looks like that layers and layers of paint that you get from really old houses. So just making sure my room was highly ventilated. So I have done this in the classroom as well, but just making sure all the doors and windows are open. But the students quite like that, because they quite like that really nice sort of interesting look that you get, and it's really unpredictable as well, which I think they quite like. So that's similar, that's just using just different sort of mounting methods really, that you can see there, so I'll whiz through those. And so this was a big piece based on Middleport pottery, and again that one was exhibited, it is back home now, but that one was quite a few months to complete. So it was I just wanted to create a brick wall, and I just wanted to get every single brick looking different and just trying out lots of different ideas. So you can just sort of see, and I wanted that sort of wonky look, because I wanted it to look like quite old. So bringing it back to the classroom, so what I then decided was, I thought, oh, there's so much, I've got so many different samples here, I've got so many bits that I could use, how could I bring that back into the classroom? So I thought it would be a really nice project for my A-level students. So I started with this project in year 12, and just showed them lots of different techniques, and then they experimented with lots of different techniques, looking at some of the things that I brought in, but also obviously referring back to other artists as well, which is what we've done there. So you can probably see some of lots of these things that I've already done in my work, and then I've just shared them. So you can see that again, there's lots of expand it there, there's a lot of sashiko, and there's lots of borrow in there, things that I use all the time, and sort of sharing with the students. So sorry, I'll try not to talk so fast. Other things that I would recommend if you are wanting to do your own textiles is joining a textiles group. I joined a group called York Textile Artists, which are a super bunch. There's about 11 of us, and we exhibit sort of around our local area, but it's also really good for networking as well, because within there's some superb felt makers, embroiderers, who are really, really skilled in what they do, really knowledgeable, but you can pick their brains for sort of what they're doing, or they'll share ideas. And many a time I've asked the students to contact them, and I've just sort of said, use their email, and they're happy to talk through their processes with the students, and they've sent back long, lengthy sort of interviews with them. And again, I always encourage them to come to our shows, and it is really lovely when they come to the show. So this particular show that we had in York Chapel, we had quite a few students come, have a look round, take photographs, and use it as part of their work. But because I was there, they didn't feel uncomfortable talking to people they might normally feel uncomfortable talking to. They were sort of happy, or I would introduce them to other members, and they would sort of talk about their work. So and I know there's lots and lots of textiles groups all over, but I know that's been really good for myself, and for the students as well. So this is the students' work, so they'll go along, and I always encourage them then to sort of use their inspiration, take lots of photos, analyze the work, and then they sometimes create work from it, sometimes they'll just use it sort of as artist research, and then they'll develop their work later. But it's always really nice to see them turn up. So again, this was a local one that we've recently had in the cinema. So again, really accessible for them because they don't feel daunted about going to the cinema and taking photographs, and then they can use that inspiration in their artwork as well, which is really nice. Same for my studio. This will be my 3rd time doing York Open Studios, which we've just had, and it's lovely when students turn up, because you can talk to them quite freely, you can show them your work, and I think they're really interested that you're still passionate about your subject, I suppose, which we all are, which is great. But also it's really good for networking. In York Open Studios, there was 150 artists, so you've got all that access to all those artists at your fingertips, that you can share all of that knowledge with students as well, which is really, really good. So again, you can see that's some of the students using that influence and using that inspiration, I suppose. But also loads, and I've sort of been having a look around, and there's so many open studios around the country that I'm sure lots of you are already part of, or visit, and or even doing trips to. But I found that's also been really good for me to focus my time, and having a deadline I've found is really good for me to make sure I get things finished on time, which is good. I'd say from open studios, meeting other artists as well and seeing how they make the most of their time. So we were lucky enough to have Sharon McDonough in York Textile Artists, and she's really interesting, her background. If you're not familiar with her, she is on Instagram as well, but she's got some amazing paintings. So I also try and encourage students to sort of look at other artists as well, and not just look at textile artists, but look at fine artists, look at ceramics, etc. And I found from that, she's got this fabulous house. I've just popped that on there that she shares. But she came in, she did a workshop, and they also give you really good rates, which is really good. And the students loved it because she just talked about her life before she was an artist, and that was great. So really sort of picking up on their knowledge as well. And then from that, this is some of the artwork that they'd created. So we'd looked at repeat pattern, how to create a repeat pattern from the wallpapers that she's painted. And again, so she's not a textile artist at all, but we've picked up bits from that, and how you can distress and make these wallpapers look much older than they are. So bringing it back to making time, I suppose, all I do is whenever I can, like yourselves, like I know lots of you are sitting there stitching now, is just try and sort of make the time when I can make the time. So a car journey is a really good example of that. I'll happily have something in mind on my journey, and I'll stitch away because it doesn't require me feeling sick or anything when I'm just looking forwards. So these are some pieces that I've used, and these are just using little scrap bits of dyed fabric, rust dyed or transfer printed, just on water soluble fabric, but you can get some really interesting results. And then those are some of the finished pieces from it. So when they're finished, they take a long time, but you don't feel it if you sat in the car for 4 hours because you're doing a long journey, because you'd probably be sitting just looking out the window. So I found I've always got a little bag that I take with me on a journey, if I take with me on holiday. I always have a little backup plan just in case. So there were some of the pieces. The bullseye one was just inspired by the airfield, so they've usually got a theme behind them, but it's more about the doing really for me on these ones, and just having something to create while I'm sort of feels like I'm wasting time, but I'm not. And there's the same. So these are some that we were taking a journey down to see my daughter. It was her first year at uni, and so these are some that I'd created in the car. So these are just photographs of some of the pavements, and again, that could be a lovely project. And some of these just simple hand stitch, so really, really simple to do, but quite effective and nice way to use your time. And then again, if you've followed me on Instagram, you'll know about my nightmare holiday last year, where we were stuck in a hotel room for 10 days because my sister developed COVID. So we were just there. So fortunately, I'd taken lots of stuff with me, and I actually got a lot of work done in 10 days, which I'm just so pleased. I sort of thought I'm going to take some work with me because hopefully I'll get a little bit of time. and I got a lot of time. So yeah, these were just some of the things that I'd sort of created from it. And then you'll see the one of the bottle kiln was for an exhibition that I just thought, well, I've got the time, I'm going to sort of make the most of it, really make the most of a bad situation. So I quite like a challenge, like to keep myself busy. So I find I work better if I've got a challenge. I find I am slightly addicted to Instagram challenges because they give me a focus. So the one that I did at the beginning of the year was this one, and this was a drawing challenge, because I feel I felt with my textiles, I was doing lots of texture work, lots of abstract work, well, not necessarily a lot of drawing. And this was great because it was a 1 month challenge. They were set for you. You just had to pop on, see what the challenge was, and then do it. And then the one of the iron, again, I was running very short of time, but I was determined to make sure I did it every day. So that was done at school. That's the school iron. And what she asked you to do there, as you can see, so she asked you to make an extendable pencil. And I hadn't done that in years. I hadn't really done it since I'd been to art college. And it just really refreshed me. And I thought, this is great. I'm going to do this with the students. So the next lesson, I was like, right, this is what we're going to do, which I don't think I would have thought of because I'd forgotten some of those techniques that are always there that you've done as a student, but you forget about them. So having somebody giving you fresh ideas, I always think is a super way to use your time. And I really enjoyed that sketchbook, just for different things that I wouldn't normally have done. 100-day projects. This is the second year that I've done that. This is last year's 100-day project, and really, really good for coming out your comfort zone, trying new things, just trying out new ideas and not really worrying if they work or not. So those were just some of the little samples, quite abstract ones that I'd done. Some of them I've gone on and framed because they actually turned out much better than I'd sort of anticipated. So and some of them have just stayed as simple samples. And then some of the 100-day project there, so opportunities had sort of come about because of them. So this is at York Art Gallery, and they just messaged me through Instagram and said, would you like to exhibit some work? Because I'd seen it. So and it's a really lovely cafe. So I just sort of thought, yeah, I'll say yes to that, that's fine. And then this is this year's, which again you will have seen, and again it's just trying out lots of new things, lots of new ideas, and just trying to be a little bit freer in my approach, I suppose. Collaborations have come, and again these are really good because they're things that I wouldn't have done. I wouldn't have worked with metals in the past. So making time to try these things and actually say yes to things. So when Anne-Marie had sort of said, would you like to do this? I thought, I'll give that a go. And again, so now you'll see later on there's a couple of things that I've done with students sort of from the back of things that I've done with other people. So again, that's another one that I've done with Kate Buckley. And if you're not familiar with Kate Buckley's work, she's a ceramicist, but her work's fabulous and really interesting to have a look at as well. So those are some of the pieces, sort of taking textiles a little bit further, but incorporating sort of ceramics into it. So if in your department you're part of the art department and you've got a kiln, you know, it could be a really nice project to sort of put the two together and try out some ideas. Kate does quite a lot of origami as well, so she's sort of got some sort of lots of different things there. You could try that. So lots of mixed media as well, which again would tie in quite nicely with design technology too. So these are some of the current year 13s who've just left, some of the projects that I'd done with them. So we were looking at a little bit of origami, but through fabrics and screen printing, but also using the laser cutter. And that's not my special area at all. So I always get the DT department to sort of help me out there. But I think by doing some of these collaborations, it's made me think, oh, students could try this or try out different things. Lots of you'll know I love Follow Friday, and I also find that's brilliant for just researching lots of different artists, so having a big bank of them. So if a student's got, I don't know, a particular project in mind, there's usually somebody I can think of to signpost them to if they're struggling, because I save all of these in my saved area, so I can just sort of pick them up and go, why don't you have a look at? And I also think as artists as well as teachers, I think it is all about supporting each other, and that's what we do so well in school. It's a sort of job where you have to support each other wherever you can, but I also think in art too, and just sort of helping each other out. And you know, there's lots of people, you know, if it's your full-time business, you know, you're relying on selling your work, and if you can help people, that's what I sort of quite like to do. So that's just me in the studio, and that's it. So I did talk really fast, like I said I would. I'm really sorry. So I will stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Linda. That was fantastic. Don't you all agree? I just think that was brilliant. Absolutely love seeing your work and the way that you work through. I think there are a few questions if Nikki wants to.
Yeah, there's a couple. Somebody says they're living in York and want to know which school you're at.
Archbishop Holgate School.
They can get in touch with you, I'm sure, there. And I know I've actually written a note of it, and somebody else has asked too. The Expandex, or Expand It. Could you tell us what it is and what the medium is and what it's called and where you get it from?
So it's from, I'm just having a look, see if I've got some, if you bear with me a minute.
It used to be called puff paint. I used to call it puff paint in my day, but it's not anymore. And I know I had a jar somewhere, but I've lost that. So
it's that one there, if you can see. So it's from Colourcraft.
Expand It.
And Expand It, yeah, it's just like that. And you can get it in different sizes. What you find though, it doesn't have a long shelf life, so if you know you're not going to use it much, probably get a smaller one, because it does tend to go mouldy if not, which is a bit grim.
Mine did. I think there's 2 or 3 different ones you can get, isn't there? You can get like little jars if you want to test it out. And yeah, you're right, it doesn't last very long, but it's great for putting colour in. Using texture and things, and you can
add paint to it, or you can put it on and then add the paint afterwards. Yeah, you can do all sorts with it, and it's really, and the kids love it, because once you've got your heat gun on it, they really like seeing it expand and change. So it's great. And also it depending on how thick or how puffy you want it, just make it, just add more really.
And the way you can use texture with it, it's amazing stuff. Thank you, Linda. Everybody said it's amazing. You've given us so much inspiration. Someone has actually said, do you actually sell your work, and how do you go about selling it, and where do you sell it, and how do you sell it?
So that I do sell it not very well in terms of promoting it really. So a lot of the time I'll just probably sell it through Instagram. I've sold a few things through Instagram with just people messaging. My plan was to put it on my website, which I haven't done yet, because it's just something that will get done at some point. And then I sort of I sell my work when I do open studios. That tends to be where I sell most of the time, or when we have exhibitions, things like that as well.
And somebody else has asked about Tyvek as well.
Yeah, so Tyvek's brilliant. I always just say to the students, because you can sort of buy them as like suits, because they're the suits that you wear when you go into we sort of say to them, you know, when you see that murder scene on the TV and they're wearing those white suits, and they'll say, yeah. I say, well, that's Tyvek. So you can buy them as a suit, or you can buy them as sort of as a roll, and you can buy different thicknesses as well, so depending on what you're after. But yeah, you can get that from again, Specialist, Heart, anywhere like that.
Most of the places sell it, and they'll have videos or YouTubes and things like that on how to use it. I think
it's really easy to use. Yeah, because that melts really nice, and you get some really nice textures from Tyvek as well.
Everybody else is they're just saying amazing, thank you. Somebody was saying they love your idea of using in a car. They're off to Scotland this summer, so they know what to do on the journey. I did it. I drove to France and took my stuff to France, but I know everybody sometimes likes to leave their stuff behind, but I get told off for taking mine with me.
I do take it, and as I say, when I ended up 10 days in Tenerife in a shady room, devastated because it was so lovely and sunny and I couldn't get out there, I was just so grateful I'd taken some art with me, just to keep me sane, really, which was good.
That's it, I think.
Yes. Has anybody else got any questions?
Someone on here is coming to our services course and excited, which is great.
Excellent. You'll be doing some of those techniques with Nikki,
If
I'm
I
sure.
twisted my camera around, you'd see all the prep in the corner and the mess in my room, but I'm not going to show you that. Any other questions for Linda?
So
You can
I just
ask
think,
yourself.
yeah, I mean, all I would say is because I think, I say, I know there are probably most people here are teachers, and it is one of those jobs that are incredibly demanding, and you come home and you just think, I'm exhausted. So even just, I'll do a lot of hand stitching now, because then I can just watch some rubbish on the TV, and I always sort of do and I'm trying, now my daughter's left, I'm trying to work at work. So when I come home, I'll come home a bit later, but leave work at work is going to be what I'm going to try and do. So, you know, and it's going to be a bit easier now. And when my children were little, it was much more difficult. Which is why I sort of said 10 minutes, I can do 10 minutes every day. And it's amazing how 10 minutes build up. You know, even if you just start something, it doesn't matter if it takes months, and you just get, I suppose I just wanted to get I love the subject and always have, and was always passionate about sharing it, but I just felt for me, I wanted to do something for me, I suppose, and that's why I wanted to sort of start creating again for me, because I'd stopped for a long time when I had little children, and I just, in fact, it just felt right. That was like, no, I'm ready again, I suppose.
Right then, thank you so much, Linda. Absolutely brilliant.